of collecting most of our data, but we do have some qualitative data to share. And then we'll also talk about what our intended plans are for collecting some quantitative data from our students. We're going to wrap it up with some change ideas. So those are the action items that we want to implement as a result of this work. And then if anyone from the participants would like to have some open discussion, we'll do that at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Amanda to talk a little bit about our college.
Thanks. So Alvin Community College, we are situated in Northern Brazoria County. We service about 5,000 students. 40% of those are dual enrollment students that we service through the high schools in the Alvin and Pearland areas. We've been around for a while. We're actually getting ready to celebrate our 75th anniversary, so that's really exciting. And our average student is about 22. So we have, students that range from 13 in high school on up, but on average is 22.
So a little bit about the Action Network for Equitable Wellbeing. This is an organization that is hosted or sponsored through New York University, actually. And it began through a couple of collaborative initiatives that started maybe 4 or 5 years ago. And it was a lot of schools like NYU, Stanford, Texas A&M was a part of it from the beginning. And it was really primarily a lot of medical professionals or healthcare professionals and mental health professionals. But as they've extended the organization's purpose, mission, aims, they've wanted to start collaborating with other types of institutions as well as other types of professionals in higher education. Their 3 main goals are to improve student well-being, to improve lives for a lifetime, remove barriers that contribute to students not learning or not learning at levels that we would like, as well as their academic achievement levels. And then creating equitable higher education conditions for all students to thrive and flourish. So a little bit about what the Action Lab is. An Action Lab is an offshoot of a NU, and it's a cohort-based experiential learning opportunity that includes what they call action sprints. And these action sprints are focused on the same topic. So to give you a little bit more of an example, this year there are approximately 12 or 15 institutions that are participating in the Action Lab. And this is really an opportunity for us to learn from other higher education institutions that are looking at this work, trying to improve or bridge gaps in equity as it relates to certain student demographics. So the focus of the Action Lab is building an understanding of the norms, processes, and structures that contribute to or perpetuate inequities in well-being, specifically in a specific population. And then using that information, using that data to establish and or deepen cross-campus collaboration in an effort to improve or completely eradicate those inequities. Some of the change ideas that we're going to talk about a little bit later are those concrete actions that you develop as an Action Lab cohort in order to try to establish or reach your goals, and then developing capacity to use data and assessment to inspire and drive improvement. So really using how you are collecting your data, maybe making improvements to that cycle, and then using the collection of the data to create those concrete actions and then see them through to fruition. So in order to participate in the Action Lab this year, you did have to commit to a 9-month window of time. So we began meeting in September. We applied, submitted our application, and then we will facilitate this work throughout the academic year. So a little bit about the methodology. There are 4 main components of the Action Lab. The first one is a data review. So instead of creating a new data set, it's basically reviewing any existing data that you may have around your topic. So it's a 3-part data review. So you collect the data if it's from the existing spaces on campus that it already lives. You take a look at the data, and then you make some determinations about where you would like to head and the direction you'd like to go with your action lab. Then you conduct interviews. So for us, we conducted interviews with both faculty and staff related to our population of choice, which we'll talk about in just a second, because for every institution, the population they've chosen is different. And then as well, we've also interviewed 4 students to talk about their lived experience and what their equitable outcomes or their well-being outcomes are at Alvin Community College. The third facet of our methodology is administering a survey, and we are using New York University's designed instrument called Wellbeing Improvement Survey for Higher Education Settings, or WISHES. What's really neat about this survey is that it is free as long as you agree to the Memorandum of Understanding from New York, and then they'll have access, non-identifiable access to the data for their big collection. And then finally, creating change ideas. What are those, and then where do we go from here? As I mentioned, we began this work in September of 2022, started participating in monthly phone calls or video calls with the other institutions participating in the project. We began our faculty, staff, and student interviews in November and then wrapped up that data collection piece in December, reported out on that information to the Action Lab cohort on at the beginning of January. We are actually now in the middle of collecting the WISHES survey data that has gone out to our students in an effort to basically find out a little bit more information about what their well-being outcomes are, and then hopefully make some decisions about change ideas from there. And then by April, we will have a bona fide action plan with those change ideas in place. And now I'm going to turn it over to Amanda, who's going to talk to you a little bit about our population of focus.
So if you couldn't tell from the context clues of our pictures before, our population of focus is the LGBTQ plus population. We are really excited to be focusing on this group for lots of reasons, one of which is that it fits in with our strategic plan in a very large way. So we are definitely staying on goal with what our institution is looking at. And it's a population, as you're going to see when we keep talking, there's not a lot of research and there's not a lot of data available right now on the LGBTQ plus student population. No one is really tracking their student success. And a lot of the research that I've read, they're kind of considered an invisible population. So we want to bring attention to them so that we can continue to try to serve them in a more equitable way to increase their success rates. So just some numbers that we found about our LGBTQ students. 20% of our students, and these are national numbers, in the United States do identify as LGBTQ+. 25% of bachelor degree completion is among lesbian and bisexual women compared to 34% in heterosexual women. So you can see that there's a little bit more of the heterosexual population of women that are able to attain a degree. Gay men are twice as likely to earn a bachelor's degree compared to lesbian women. Queer students, this is kind of one that really kind of hurts my heart. Queer students are 28% more likely to consider dropping out of college. And 10% of LGBTQ students are not even planning to attend college based on their verbal harassment they've received in their elementary, high school situations. And then 17% of LGBTQ plus students, 25 and older, have a bachelor's degree. So that word student shouldn't be there, but it's the LGBTQ population. So 17%, which is dramatically lower than what you would see in the cisgendered population. So just some experiences that our students are facing. Food insecurity is a very, very big problem for this population of students, 27% compared to 15% of non-LGBTQ plus students. Housing is a very big challenge. You can see that it's almost doubled with having disruptions of housing for LGBT students compared to the cisgenders. Victimization, sexual orientation is the second most motivated bias for hate crimes in colleges. And then 40% of LGBTQ plus students have considered suicide, and that's just a staggering number.
Okay, so one of the big things that we did is we reached out to our faculty and our students to kind of gather some more information because when we looked at data from ACC, there wasn't very much to look at to begin with. So, what we found from our faculty and students that we interviewed was the need for more awareness. A lot of students and faculty that we interviewed talked about how education would be a big piece to bring awareness to the community and fulfilling their needs and increasing their wellness. We also found that community was a big thing that they needed as well. So, limited support from the campus community. The community that we have on campus was not found to be as welcoming and inclusive as we'd like it to be. Process, so accessibility for students. Sharing preferred names and pronouns. So making that either on the application or in the system to where when a student shows up for an appointment or something like that, people are able to see that they have a preferred name instead of maybe accidentally dead naming them or calling them something that they don't go by anymore. And then infrastructure, so technology and campus accommodations like gender neutral restrooms or family restrooms. So this is an overall view of our driver diagram. We started off with finding our aims, which is our overall goals, our primary drivers, which are things that we can do to um, reach those aims, our secondary drivers, and then our change ideas. So the change ideas, the third square or shape is intentionally left blank to show that this is a fluid, ever living diagram. So as we get more data, as we do more research, and we talk to more people, this driver diagram will continue to change.
Okay, so let's go a little bit more in depth into the driver diagram. So our two overarching goals here at ACC is to improve the well-being of our students that are in the LGBTQ plus population and increase their success here on campus. And so, of course, those are two large, lofty, overarching goals. And so here's an opportunity to drill down a little deeper. How can we actually put our hands into action and start making some of these changes? So we've identified 3 different action steps or categories, areas of focus that we want to work on while we're in this project. And so the first one is going to be under teaching and learning. This goes back to that awareness piece. We want to increase that awareness on campus, which means we want to provide educational training opportunities for staff and faculty. In fact, we got started this Wednesday with a group of panelists of an organization, a nonprofit organization on sexual health. We had a UH Clear Lake counseling intern student. We had one of our students here that is part of the Pride Alliance, which is the organization for LGBTQ plus students on campus. And then we had the advisor who is an avid ally of the students. And it was wonderful to get to hear their perspectives and their suggestions as well. And then, of course, we are presenting to you today. So those are 2 ways that we're getting started on just providing more opportunities for faculty and staff. So then going into the supportive environment, which is also part of our core values here at ACC Cares. And we want to foster that inclusive and welcoming environment for all of our students. This should be a safe space for them to be. And we are going to try to work on different ways to do that with marketing and resources and just see how else we can help our students to feel welcomed here. And then the third component of that is the onboarding pathways. So we definitely want to make sure that we are following best practices and doing what we can so that from the beginning in the onboarding process, we are helping students to feel welcome with knowing what their preferred pronouns are, their preferred names, and that we're doing what we can across our student management system to get those things set in place. All right, so down to the nitty gritty, the change ideas, which hopefully we'll be getting to implement soon this semester, or at least get started. So, this is what we'd love to do. We'd love to invite some guest speakers to offer ally training and continue in that education piece. And we would like to see how we can increase the number of family restrooms on campus. During some of these conversations that we had with students, certain things came up, things that, for example, I had not thought of as a cisgendered woman who just goes to the women's restroom. But what about our students that identify as trans, for example, and may not feel comfortable going to a restroom labeled for women or men? How are we meeting their needs and giving them a safe space where they feel comfortable? Including their preferred name in the student management system, which is something I mentioned previously, and just making this a more broad across the systems that we already have set in place at the college to make sure that ID cards and other documentation on educational records include the student's preferred name and preferred pronouns. And then, as Holly had mentioned before, we are in the process of gathering additional data through the Wishes survey to just further understand what students' needs are and get additional ideas like that blank on the driver diagram. What else can we be doing to help our students?
Okay, so in an effort to continue collecting data for our project, one of the biggest initiatives that Annalisa referenced is that change ideas are something that continue to be created as we collect more data, have more information provided to us about this population and their well-being, and then have initiatives that spring up out of that data collection. And so if you don't mind, there's only 3 quick questions on this exit survey. But if you could scan the QR code, there's also a link at the bottom of the screen. If that works a little better for you, you can key that in. And if you don't mind participating in the survey, that will give us your participant feedback as part of our data collection as well. So as we referenced, we are continuing to collect data through the Wishes survey for the next week or so. We will use that data collection to better inform our driver diagram and create additional change ideas. This work will not stop in April. We will continue working on collecting data over time, making comparisons of the data over time. So probably implementing the Wishes survey at another time in the future, and then comparing that information to our first issuance of the survey, and then creating additional change ideas as those are needed. So I'm going to leave the exit survey on the screen, but want to open this time up now to our participants for questions, feedback. Is there anything else that you would like for us to cover in a little bit more detail about our new project?
So while people are thinking about the questions, I want to hear what your opinion about. You mentioned in your presentation to use pronouns or ask students how they would like to, what would they prefer to be called. Could you share your thoughts on how to do it gently and so nobody would get offended, especially in dual enrollment classes where student population is younger and they're more under control of their parents who may or may not agree with this type of initiatives or introductions, or, how would faculty go about asking students what their preference would be, and not to put anybody on the spot?
Amanda, I'm going to ask you to respond to that question.
So, this is a question that you shouldn't just come out and ask. If you suspect that a student has a different pronoun or they prefer a different name, let them come to you. Don't put it on them. A good rule of thumb in the classroom is to ask the whole class, what are your preferred pronouns? don't single anybody out. When we talk about dual enrollment, you're very right. It is a completely different kind of place. And you just have to be really careful. Again, I would say asking the whole class about preferred pronouns, but when we talk about preferred names in our system, it's a little tricky because at the high school with dual enrollment, you have the student's high school name, which is their skyward name. You can't really do anything about it. And it really needs to align with the name in our system. And unless the parent is willing to change the student's name in skyward, then unfortunately our hands are a little bit tied because we have to make sure the records match. What I would recommend for faculty is just to practice kindness in that situation. If a student has a preferred name, then make note of it on, your notes, however you're managing things, and use it in the classroom. Just with the expectation that you won't be able to change it in Blackboard or on a report card. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, thank you. Just asking because we recently had this type of a situation when the parent was not very happy with the way it was introduced. And so maybe your office can put some tips or some kind of one pager for faculty how to introduce this diversity and inclusion initiative in their classrooms and how to adjust those messages to specific audiences.
I know what you're talking about because just for
Okay,
reference, before I was the director of recruitment and enrollment, I was a dual enrollment advisor, and I'm familiar with the situation that Nadia is speaking about. And I think, one way you could do it is just saying, we want to be inclusive, and if you have a preferred name or a preferred pronoun, please feel free to, let me know. And that kind of takes the onus off of the entire student population in the class as well. I think that Leanne just posted a comment as well.
Yeah, Leanne says, I know this is old school, but I give students an index card on the first day to tell me a little bit about themselves. And that's an opportunity for them to share without stating it publicly. Anything that they, would be uncomfortable doing that in the group environment, but can let your instructor know. I think that's a wonderful idea, old school or not, it works. I also want to, applaud Nadia because I think she's given us another change idea going forward, whether she knew it or not, which is exactly why we're holding a lot of these training opportunities and workshops, is because we do get a lot of feedback through these, and it helps us generate ideas about new marketing materials or promotional materials that we can develop, as well as training resources for faculty, staff, and eventually we want to roll that out to students as well. Sure, if you have other suggestions or ideas, please feel free to either come off mute and share them or put them in the chat. Again, we are also open for any other questions that you may have. While you're thinking about those, in case you're interested, there are a lot of institutions that are looking at this population of focus, but again, not all of the institutions are looking at this community. Texas A&M University, for example, is targeting first generation students, so a lot of their work is focused on that population. Some of the other campuses are looking at transgender students very specifically. We made ours a little bit more broad. But just to give you a little bit of an idea, some are looking like at African American males and their well-being and collecting data on that.
I can share a perspective of just one-on-one, since I worked with a lot of students one-on-one as an advisor and as a counselor, and just making a shift in myself and starting that with, hi, my name is Lily and my pronouns are she and her. So I'm taking the mystery out of that. What is your preferred name and what are your preferred pronouns? So it's like, I'm going first. So then you know how I like to be addressed and how would you like me to address you? Sometimes I got those students that were like, what are you talking about? I just said, just tell me what your preference is. This is what I mean. And they would let me know. Or a lot of the students are familiar with this and right away knew how they wanted to respond and were appreciative that they were asked their preference. So that's just another little perspective of more of a one-on-one.
That's probably especially important for online classes when people really don't see each other, and some names may be foreign, and they may not even know who is that person. So that probably can be helpful even from a cultural point of view, like linguistical point of view, when not everybody is aware of different countries, different names that people coming with. Yeah, so that's a linguistic diversity, right? That we can include into our diversity and inclusion initiatives. So, what is your overall vision for our campus with this particular project that you're working on? What you're trying to achieve, and what is your timeline, if there is any?
I think holistically, our goals are that we want to ensure that the students who identify in this population, that their measures for well-being are on par with students who don't identify as part of this population, so that their retention and success are the same. That we don't have students dropping out because they don't feel that we have a supportive or inclusive community for them here at ACC, and ensuring overall that we are contributing to positive ways to improve that culture if we need to and how we need to. Unfortunately, in the state of Texas, Apply Texas does not allow a space for preferred name. And so that is something that institutions on an individual basis have had to develop in their own student information systems. We are lucky in that we are receiving an upgrade in the coming months that will allow for that. And so that will in turn allow for ID cards to express a preferred name, regardless of whether or not that student's preferred name matches what's on official documents. And so that's going to take some adoption, some work to make sure that all of our processes and infrastructure reflect those changes. And then as well as training for our faculty and staff on where to find that preferred name, how it's going to appear. And so I think those are some of our initial aims. And then over time, I'm interested to see what the data shows. I think the wishes survey is going to be very helpful because sexual orientation is not a question that's asked on traditional surveys. So we can't really extrapolate that data for those students in any bona fide way. And so this survey is going to allow us to do that for the first time.
This is great. So that was my second question that I think you answered, is how you what's the tool that you're going to be using for collecting the data. So far it's just a survey that all students are going to be answering, or?
Yes, so the survey as well as focus groups and interviews with students who, so the survey, just to explain that a little bit, it is anonymous. However, there is an identifiable number associated with it. So we're not selling it as anonymous. Basically, the students that identify in this population, we are going to target for future iterations of the survey, basically to facilitate interviews and focus groups with that population so we can get information in a more qualitative way going forward, and then using that information again, maybe redoing the survey with new students or with the same students, or other ways to collect data.
And how is it it's not affecting FERPA or anything, right? It's okay.
No, we're only, I should have mentioned the survey is only going to on-campus students. Dual enrollment students are not receiving this survey. So that is one thing that we are targeting right now, is only on-campus students.
And you can see, I was going to throw in, I mean, we're collecting data in more ways as well. For example, the QR codes that we put on the screen, the really awesome event that Annalisa and Lily did earlier in the week. We're collecting data as we go. And as we continue to grow in this project, the data we collect will become richer. Right now, we're asking very simple questions because we're at the beginning. But as our programs increase, as we really identify what we want, we'll be able to collect data that really speaks to what we're looking at. And it'll be, as we roll out initiatives.
So far you're looking for the data of success, right? Or what specifically data you're looking for?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, well-being actually has 8 different facets, but we are really looking at physical and mental well-being, emotional well-being. Those are the ones that we're really focusing on. So the questions ask, do you feel safe in your campus community? Do you ever have concerns about, depression or anxiety? It's questions like that, and then we use that information based on how they've answered the sexual orientation question to make determinations about whether there are differences. What's interesting about the wishes survey is that, again, you can use any population of focus. So 3 or 4 years down the road from now, we may need to use that data for a different population of focus, in order to see if there are other uh, barriers or other, other groups that are struggling with their well-being, and ways that we may be able to help increase their well-being in order to help retain them here at ACC, and then help them complete their degrees if that is their educational goal.
And what is the strategies? I know it's like far ahead, you're just starting this project, but so once you collect the data and then you see that this population or that population, they need more or less mental help, or I don't know, housing help or whatever that help they may need. So then what? What's the action plan, or is there any action plan yet? Or you just at the beginning stages that you're just collecting data and once you see the whole picture for now?
I'll start that, but I would love for our counselors to also contribute to that question. I think we are at the beginning, and so we've made some assumptions. We've made some educated guesses about what this population may or may not be experiencing here at ACC. And so, through more data collection, we will determine whether our assumptions are correct or not. Is our hypothesis right? And so, going from there, we'll be able to make additional change ideas or action items. I do know that financial and food insecurity is a concern for a lot of different types of students. And so I think there are plans on the horizon for additional work in those areas, regardless of the population of focus. I don't know if Lily or Annalisa want to talk a little bit more about that.
Sure. So I think depending on what we find from the data, then we'll brainstorm. We'll be able to bring in outside resources, or Lily and I will work together to create further panels that amplify voices in the community. Presenters that come in to bring in more education and awareness about the community. We'll come together to kind of figure out what is needed to close that gap of well-being with that population.
Are you planning to share in any way this data with faculty, and how will it help faculty to work with the students in the classroom?
That's an excellent question. I mean, I think we hope to continue to present presentations and maybe workshops for faculty and staff in a variety of formats. We rely heavily on convocation for a lot of those tools. Sometimes that's a good placement for it, maybe as an introduction, but not really a bona fide training. We have been working with Pride Alliance because they have done a lot. The sponsors of that organization, as well as some other faculty on campus, have really done a lot with ally training and promoting awareness of this community on campus in the recent years. And so we're wanting to partner with them to maybe request some grant funds so that we can expand what they've been able to provide thus far. So working with them to, to kind of bridge some gaps.
So what would be your, I know I'm just bombarding you with questions, and I hope everybody else have their questions too to ask, and there is plenty of time yet. So here's another question I got. So what would be your suggestion for faculty in regarding curriculum updating, and how would they incorporate these findings that you will have into their classroom?
Excellent question again. I think that is a question that can be applied to any type of DEI work that's going on. You want to be sure your curriculum is reflective of the students you're teaching. And so we have students that identify and have intersectionality of multiple identities in the classroom. And so, if it's English, it's having authors that identify as part of the LGBTQ community, just like you don't want to have all white male authors in the works that you're presenting. So it's very similar in that regard, when you're trying to develop curriculum for various subjects.
So are you planning to work with curriculum groups?
We definitely haven't gotten there yet.
Sounds like another change idea, Holly, and future collaboration opportunities. But you're right. It's just, how can we bring this awareness and bring this more to the forefront so that we can collaborate, we can have that as part of the consideration when things are being decided as to which authors or which text or what type of assignments and things like that, in order to be more inclusive to all of our students and representing our students.
Well,
And
as a college, we are working on overall on diversity and inclusion initiatives, right? And also working with the Houston GPS, which is a collaboration of regional colleges and universities here. So part of the discussion there is actually how do we include on student learning outcomes these initiatives, right? And it's been quite a difficult question. So some institutions that I looked at, they found very interesting ways to actually create learning outcomes for each area, whether it's English or history or math, doesn't matter. So what is how you envision, again, I'm going back, I guess, into collaboration, not only with the faculty, but also are you working with the other groups that are already working on campus on diversity and inclusion?
Yes, we are.
Initiative.
I've partnered with Dr. Baldwin and Haley Fuller and Johanna Hume, who are history faculty members, and they are working on the inclusion work that you're mentioning with the GPS. And we've done some ally training for advising. We've had several discussions with them about how can we potentially have a book club with faculty and staff in the coming year. So we are working with them. But as you know, we're still really early into it. I think that we're all marching like to the beat of the same drum. And we're all kind of really, really excited to do stuff and really make a difference.
This is great. Well, if anybody else have questions, because it seems like I overtook the presentation here.
Well, we really do appreciate everybody's feedback on the survey that is going to be used anonymously for future data collection, as well as change ideas. We hope that's what it will turn into, and it will help guide our path as we move forward in this project. And we just appreciate you participating today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. It was very interesting and insightful. And again, another food for thoughts, right? And thank you for doing this. This is a great initiative, and it's right into part of our college's strategic planning. So great initiatives. Thank you for the presentation. It's the first time we hear from you. I hope it's not the last time we hear from you. And you're going to presenting more and more, and probably at our next conference as well. Yes. All
We'd
right.
be happy to. I'll go ahead and volunteer us for next year.
Yes. All right. Well, thank you so much. I'm stopping recording now.